This video has been a long time coming. Before we begin, I need to establish a few things. The website me and this person, who I shall refer to as the Discord snake, spoke on was Pisscord, also known as Discord. On Discord, I used a name that was not my own, a code name, if you will. I did this because every single person I saw on that site was doing the same thing. This will be very important later on. To begin our story, in 2017, I was in a server filled with bricks. People said nasty things about me, and I was no longer in this server by the latter part of the year. It was in this server that I met the Discord snake, who had similar political leanings to me and liked some various shows that I was also into. The Discord snake claimed to evolve over the time that we spoke to each other. The Discord snake initially barred me from singing and from discussing certain morbid topics such as suicide. I abided by these restrictions because I wanted to speak to him, but keep in mind that this will be very important later on. He had certain things he did not want to hear while we spoke. Another important thing to note is that every now and again he would mention that he was being asked about whether he still spoke to me by people in that server we were both in. This is significant because I would have no way of knowing that he spoke to them without him telling me that he did. I lost interest in speaking to him by April 2018 due to various character traits of his that I was not a fan of. After we began speaking again within a few months of this, he decided to reveal his full name to me. I only said my first name. This again will be very important later on. He annoyed me again at least 2 times before I blocked him in February of last year. After that, I thought I was finally rid of him. And then 15 months later, I get a friend request from another account he's made with the same name. I was under the impression before clicking the accept friend request option that maybe he had decided to reach out to me due to some recognition of my issues with interacting with him. This correspondence lasted a single week, but it was a week marked by betrayal, lies, creepiness, stupidity, and dehumanizing of yours truly. One of the core themes of his disillusioning of me was his recurring ability to hang himself with his own words and actions. I mentioned earlier that I told him my real first name in the period of our correspondence before I cut it off. I became aware of a YouTube account he had under an alias during the last period of our speaking, and I later mentioned having an account at one point, which he subsequently asked for the link to this conversation at the latest taking place during the beginning of 2019. And I declined to give this account's link to him. Within less than 5 days of me continuing to talk to him, I got an email notification for an account that had subscribed to me and recognized it as his alt. I confronted him over this, and he reasoned that he had looked for it because I wouldn't give it to him. This was proof that he didn't respect me because he didn't respect my wishes for him to not have my account. And this was one of the biggest factors in me cutting it off after a week. This was someone who asked me for some contact information, got turned down, and then used an alternate method to overrule my decision. This was proof that he didn't respect me because he didn't respect my wishes for him to not have my account. And this was one of the biggest factors in me cutting it off after a week. This was someone who asked me for some contact information, got turned down, and then used an alternate method to overrule my decision. What he did was literally the equivalent of me asking someone for their address, and then after that person says no, I get in my car and follow them around until I see them go inside a house and lock the door behind themselves. While that scenario might have more implications because it's in real life, it follows the same beats. Someone doesn't want to give another person information, so they get it through an alternate means behind the person's back. But let's address how he hung himself. YouTube allows people to private their subscriptions, meaning that no one will be able to see who you're subscribed to. And the people you're subscribed to won't know you are either, because YouTube won't email them a notification. So if he had just turned off his public subscriptions, I would have never found out he committed this treachery. Anyone who's watched my past relationship videos, especially the ones where I show screenshots, knows that I have been belittled for my appearance for years on YouTube. I similarly conveyed that during my dialogues with him, but I actually went a step further in disclosing that I had been mocked for specific parts of my appearance. Now, he never saw what I looked like until doing this creepy digging for my YouTube account. In our first conversation after he unearthed it, he said that I look fine and that he wasn't going to lie and tell me that he thought I was handsome. His comments about how physically appealing he thought I was were unsolicited, meaning that I did not ask for them. But also consider this. You hear from a man who's tired of people talking about the way he looks, and your bright idea of being a friend is to talk about the way he looks. I confronted him over this during our next conversation, and he alleged that a majority of men talk about the way they look when speaking to each other. He wanted me to believe that most straight men congregate in groups to evaluate each other's appearance. I asked him for a poll that could prove this claim, which he didn't have. And this was another example of him hanging himself with his words, because all he had to do to be validated in his claim was say that most men he has spoken to discuss the way they look, as opposed to the majority. While trying to defend his buffoonish evaluation of my appearance, he claimed that this was similar to what my classmates had done. As I mentioned that some of my classmates had mocked my appearance, but here's the snag. Not only did the majority of my classmates not even interact with me that much to directly state what they thought of my appearance, but the majority of the time I was in school, I was not mocked for my appearance. I didn't get other males trying to belittle the way I looked until I was in 6th grade, and this carried up. I didn't get other males trying to belittle my looks until I was in 6th grade. And this carried on for the rest of junior high and the first 3 years of high school, as no one in 12th grade said anything about it to me. And when I was in college for 2 years, anytime I spoke to other people, the main subject was usually school itself. The other weird part of this account digging is that I gave him my first name over a year ago, and he just now decided he needed to dig for my account. Basically, this inferred to me that he probably wouldn't have been bothered to do something so creepy if I had just ignored him, as I had been doing since the previous year. He also claimed he was motivated to do this because I refused to give him the link, which he never asked for when we began speaking to each other again. So he's basically holding me to a decision from over a year ago that I could have changed my mind on. It's funny how he was allowed to change his opinion on things while I was not allowed. The Discord snake conveyed this view that censorship was on the rise and that any restrictions whatsoever would lead to more and more censorship. I mentioned that I watched a stream last year where a user literally posted the streamer's address repeatedly. And I cited this as an example of certain things people write that are not offering an opinion and are entirely harmful, and he found a way to justify permitting this. He also expressed support for legalizing death threats. Think about this. He supports not being allowed to block people off your own page because it's against freedom of speech, and he cites the First Amendment. But when he's supporting the legalization of death threats, he's citing his opposition to a law. So he's going to use the law to justify not being allowed to block people, but go against the law when supporting another position on the same issue. The reason this was partially funny is because he's a Jimmy Dore fan. Dore being someone that opposed Alex Jones being the platform from major social media websites. I also oppose this, but you can oppose websites removing someone without supporting your own harassment. I sent him a screenshot taken by someone after Dore had blocked them on Twitter, and he expressed shock at this. I have proof that people have written comments to me saying that I should die, that I'm ugly, a bunch of rhetoric that is, just not constructive. I had a user who made several accounts to downvote my live streams as to draw attention away from them and their subject matter, because he knew people would question the number of downvotes. And people who have written roastings on the chats of my live streams to both me and my subscribers. If I block someone on YouTube, that means the only channel they cannot speak on is my own. They can still write nasty things about me or other people on millions of other channels on YouTube. This is not deplatforming. And how is it censorship to bar someone from writing on one account while allowing them to write on millions of others? I saw the block feature as being similar to what a lot of restaurants and businesses do, where they exercise the right to boot you out of their building if you either say something or wear something against their policy. That means you can still wear or say that thing somewhere else, just not there. And that's what the Discord snake was really upset about. It wasn't that YouTube censors you from being able to talk about whoever you want. It was that it stops you from being able to write your comments about that person anywhere you want. He tried to make it seem as if YouTube is just Tube, and being banned from speaking on my channel means being barred from speaking anywhere else, that I'm the living embodiment of YouTube. Here's another highlight of his lack of self-awareness. He mentioned in our previous periods of correspondence that he found it cowardly that people disable comments or ratings. The person who writes nasty BS while hiding his face should be the last one calling anyone cowardly. But I mentioned to him that he seemingly did not see this act of hiding behind a keyboard while you talk in an either disparaging or controversial manner as cowardly. His defense was that people do this because they don't want real life retaliation for the things they say are right. Remember, this is the same person who justified it being free speech when people post someone's address. So he supports people who hide their face not getting real life repercussions for the things they do online. But he also supports people who make content someone doesn't like getting real life repercussions for the things they do online. If you hide behind a fake name and don't show your face, you should be protected. But if you do show your face, then it's open season. The only reason he's empathetic to people who hide their face while they write trash is because he does that. I personally think people should be allowed to hide their face. But if you want to talk about the way someone else looks or release someone else's information, you should not be taken seriously. Don't throw stones while you live in a glass house. In one of my final conversations with the Discord snake, after I made it apparent I didn't appreciate him giving his opinion of my appearance, he noted that I had certain things I did not want discussed and that he did not understand why I did this. He did not comprehend why a heterosexual man did not want to hear if another man thought he was pretty. Remember when I mentioned that he initially barred me from playing music or discussing certain topics like suicide? This means that he's a hypocrite, because it was okay for him to have certain things he did not want to talk about. But when I did it, I'm making these demands that he couldn't possibly comprehend. Remember when I mentioned that every now and again he would mention that he was being asked about whether he still spoke to me by people on that server we were both in? In May, after the Floyd protests began, these same people told him that his opinion on the matter did not matter because of his ethnicity. He thought this was so outrageous to the point of cutting off all contact with them. I agree that someone's race or gender should not invalidate their opinion, but here's the snag. He mentioned to me that these people had repeatedly accused me of being part of that romance regime I will not name, and made claims about what my personality must be to have such problems with getting a woman, even though they've never met me. He revealed after I asked that they had never insulted him before this. I said to him, you were okay with them saying all of that nasty nonsense about me for years, but the moment they say something about you, then it's time to start cutting people off. He claims that he would disavow what they were saying, but I responded that He could have just disavowed what they said about him and kept speaking to them. He only chose to cut them off after they said something about him, evidently meaning that he was not at all that bothered by the years of gross comments they had made about me. Let me explain how he hung himself. I asked if these people had ever insulted him in the past because I wanted to see how intolerant he was of what they said about him and contrast that with his behavior toward what they said about me. So if they kept insulting him as they did myself, I'd be a lot less dissatisfied with the situation. But the other way he hung himself was admitting that he still spoke to these same people. You see, I'm not someone who is in very many Discord servers, nor did I ever ask him if he still spoke to these people. Without him volunteering that he still talked to them, I would have never known who he was speaking to, and thus would have never gotten offended by the contrast of him talking to them after they said a bunch of gross garbage about me, but cutting them off almost instantaneously when they finally got around to talking trash about him. I have a zero tolerance policy for people who blame the one person trying to change things for why they stay the same. This is why I nearly cut off Triple L after she accused me of doing something wrong when appealing to relatives to finance my last 2 years of college. And this is why I don't talk to people about relationships for the most part. I've been blamed enough for why people make the decisions that they do. So during one of our last conversations, I was venting about the difficulty of getting employed, which I've talked about in several videos and streams here, and showed proof of the over 100 applications I have filled out since December. His response to this was to suggest that maybe my videos were having an adverse effect on me getting employed. You heard that buffoonery right. A person who gets less than 100 views on average is so famous that all of these employers know who he is and won't say anything. It was really stupid for him to suggest this, but also enlightening because I knew immediately that I would stop communicating with him, since I don't talk to people who blame the one person trying to change things for why they stay the same. The Discord snake had a lot in common with Triple L. They both accused me of being part of that romance regime that I will not name. They both tried to say I imposed too many restrictions on what they could talk about, and they both tried to call me their friend while actively annoying me. I told both of them, if you don't wish to do the things I like, you can take a hike. But let me address him calling me friend because I'm very sick of that word and its usage by these computer clowns. No friend of mine would blame me for not getting a job after I had applied to over 100 of them in less than 7 months. No friend of mine would dig for an account of mine after I declined to give it to them. No friend of mine would support people having the right to harass me on my own page. No friend of mine would state to me their opinion of my appearance after I stated that I was tired of this. And no friend of mine would pretend me restricting us from speaking about certain things was unreasonable when they literally did the exact same thing. Friend is just a stupid word that people say to someone they want to feel better, as they actively demean that friends' wants and needs of their own. I did a video on romance dehumanizing men, but the same thing can be said about platonic relationships too. If he was looking for work and I told him the things he posted online were so notorious that they prevented him from getting employment, he'd probably be pissed. But he should be allowed to come to that same conclusion when evaluating my situation without a reprisal from me. People can feel any way they want about what you do, but you're supposed to put up with whatever comes your way from them because you're not allowed to have likes and dislikes like an actual person. So our relationships are not fair. My time is not free if you disrespect me, and that's what was done here.